Hello and welcome back to this bite-sized episode of 40-Minute Mentor with me, your host, James Mitra. I'm the founder and CEO of JBM, a search firm that places executives and future leaders into high-growth startups and scale-ups. I've shared a little bit about my journey with JBM over the last 10 years on this podcast, and one of the moments that I've frequently referenced is about 5 years ago when we decided to pivot the business from working with corporates to doubling down exclusively on working with founders and startups. At the time, it was a pretty drastic decision. We ultimately restructured the company from 8 to 3 people. We literally, in 24 hours, said goodbye to all of our corporate clients, and we set off on a new path, really focusing on the area that we saw the market going and where our true passion was. But it was super difficult, very stressful time, but ultimately helped turn JBM into what it is today. Business pivots are pretty common in the startup world and come with a whole host of benefits as well as challenges. Some work brilliantly, others not so much. So today, I wanted to share a bit more about the pivot that turned JBM into the search firm it is today, and some of my learnings along the way, which I really hope will help any of you that might find yourself in a similar situation. Firstly, just to set the scene, 5 years ago, JBM was a very different proposition. Although the values of being a relationship-focused, really consultative search firm were very much the case, there was a different look and feel to the business. We were working with the wrong types of clients. It was largely corporate businesses with a sprinkling of startups who ultimately didn't really value what we brought to the table in terms of our entrepreneurialism, our relationship-focused approach. Everything was so much more transactional, and we were consistently fighting against that way of doing things, which just isn't in our nature. We also had a very different type of team, amazing people, great recruiters, but the truth is a lot of them were better suited to a more corporate environment and working with those types of clients. And the truth is, I got to a point where I was just pretty unhappy. We were having cash flow challenges because companies weren't paying us on time. I wasn't getting a lot of energy from the searches that I was working on. And I found myself in a position where I was managing a lot of people and didn't feel equipped to do it effectively. So I was getting down on myself. I was working really hard. I was very stressed. I wasn't seeing my family enough. And I got to this point where I almost threw in the towel. Now, one of the things that I think really helped as we went about this rather radical pivot to basically restructuring the team from 8 to 3, getting rid of all our corporate clients within 24 hours and just deciding to double down on working with startups and VCs, rebranding the business completely and launching this podcast. There was kind of a whole series of big events that happened. It was incredibly stressful, but it was the right thing to do. And I think at the heart of that, and some of my big learnings are as follows. One, trusting your gut. I really wasn't enjoying what I was doing. I was really getting down on myself, and I let that happen for far too long. And at the end of the day, I knew the path we were on was the wrong one. I wasn't building the sort of business that I set out to build. And all my energy came from working with founders and working with startups, but I was ignoring that because I felt I needed the big brands and the kind of security that comes with that. But it wasn't what I set out to do. And so it just kind of trusting your gut and going, this isn't right, and listening to that and taking action off the back of it is so important sometimes. I think the other thing to say is I was building what felt at the time quite a big business. I was following everybody else's path of, you've got to build a big business, a 40-person recruitment business. That's the only way you're going to sell it. And the truth is, bigger isn't always better. We had some of our funnest times as a 2-3 person company. And the truth is, particularly in the economic climate we find ourselves in today, is there is nothing wrong with being lean and profitable. You don't need to chase investment. You don't have to chase vanity metrics of hiring loads of people and expanding into loads of markets. And I realized that I was probably building the wrong shape of business. Ironically, now that we are 5 years down the line, we're actually back to the same size we were, but we've done it in a much more considered style. We've continued to focus on profit over growth at all costs. And I am way happier as a result. And I think we're actually, on the path that we always wanted to be, which is having a great impact, building a business that really adds real value, and one that I don't have to stress every month about, will I hit payroll? And I think part of that is about getting the energy from the right places. And that's where one thing that we did at JBM is we focused on what we were passionate about, and then we really doubled down on that. So working with founders, working with startups, sharing these sorts of inspiring stories through the podcast, starting to create content and run events and build communities, bringing people together, which is at the forefront of what JBM really stands for. And by leaning into that passion, it made work so much more fun. It meant that we've been able to have a much bigger impact. And as a result, I think of being able to attract far greater talent to the business, incredible board advisors, and also the right types of companies to work with. So I think follow your passion and really lean into that has been something that we really helped when it came to making that pivot. I think the other thing to say is you can't just always make these decisions on your own. Being a solo founder, it can be a lonely place. And that's where mentorship and advisors can play a huge part in it. And they really did in this pivot process. It was Fred Jones, a great friend and former 40-minute mentor, one of our board advisors, really helped us to see the wood from the trees when it comes to where we were going wrong with the business. He did some very simple data analysis, helped us kind of see where we were going wrong, and really said to us, you love working with startups and founders. Why aren't you doing this? And he just played that devil's advocate, helped us to really realize that we were wasting a lot of time in the wrong areas and helped focus our minds and then give me the confidence to follow through with that, big pivot. So I owe Fred a huge amount if he's listening. Thanks again, Fred. And thanks to all our mentors, all of the advisors that have played their part along the JBM journey. I couldn't have done it without them. And I'm sure lots of you listening will have a very similar situation with people that are your go-to in times of challenge. And I think, given the economic climate we're in now, I would lean even more so on those trusted mentors and advisors who sometimes have to call you out and ask the challenging questions and really play devil's advocate. If they're the right mentors, it will be coming from a good place and they can be transformational in terms of the business. Finally, I think the other big learning from that pivot and experience was the importance of being really transparent and having real empathy for your team. It's never nice to make people redundant and make cuts. It's definitely the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But I think we tried to do it in a really human way. We tried to be very transparent and communicate, over communicate why we were doing what we were doing, and then go above and beyond to support those individuals who were leaving the business with what's next. I made multiple introductions, helped with CVs, obviously from a compensation perspective, tried to support as best as we can in terms of making sure the team were okay, paying out bonuses, etc. And then ultimately, because I think of the way we handled it, many of those people have gone on to become some of our biggest advocates and ambassadors, great friends of mine in the company. And that has really sort of stayed with me because I see a lot of bad behavior when it comes to letting people go and the ruthlessness of business. All founders have to go through this. A lot of leaders have to go through it. And it's a sad fact, but I think the way you do it says a lot about your business. And so by being transparent, being human in the way you do things, and then doing your best to support people that are leaving your business, the impact that can have in the long term can be really, really felt, both good and bad. And it can really help your employer brand if you deal with things in the right way. So one bit of advice from me is just to really consider that when you're having to make cuts or make difficult decisions. I think in that time, that difficult time, it was made easier from the kind of way we went about it. And I have to credit Tim, my business partner in that time, again, our board, Jimmy and other directors in the company for their support in helping me with those difficult decisions and the communication of them, because I couldn't have done it by myself. So with all that said, all those learnings from the pivot, I've talked about some of the harder parts of that and some of the learnings that I took from it. But at the end of the day, despite the challenges of the pivot and how hard some of these conversations were and the risk that it felt at the time that I was doing, ultimately, it has been the best thing I've ever done because it helped me reprioritize, it helped me refocus, it has helped us to work with the right types of companies in the right way, and really has given us the ability to chart our own path. And as a result of that, JBM has been really profitable ever since. We've been able to hire the right types of people for the business. We have worked with incredible companies and founders in the way we want to work, in a true partnership. We've launched a podcast, which for me has been like a mini MBA, and also enabled us to have a greater impact on the world by sharing incredible stories and highlight diverse founders and leaders and talk about topics that we really are passionate about. And yeah, for us, been incredible. And it's also given me more time back with my family from kind of reprioritizing and doing things in a different way. So sometimes pivots can be incredible. And I hope by sharing some of the candid insights into one of the darkest parts of my founder journey, it's also shone a light on the fact that the darkest moments can become the lightest and the best. And I really hope that will help any of you that might be in a similar situation right now, thinking about pivoting or going through a pivot, to be reminded that some incredible good can come out of some really hard situations. If you have any thoughts on that or experiences you want to share, please do reach out at info@jbmc.co.uk. And don't forget to tune in on Wednesday when I'm joined by the amazing James Lowe, co-founder and CEO of Mana, an app designed to help everyone make a living by sharing their passion. He's been through some interesting experiences and pivots along the way too, and he is one of the most engaging, super smart and lovely founders I've had the privilege of meeting on 40 Minute Mentor. So I'm sure you're going to love that episode. I'll see you then.